You. Yeah, sorry about that. What happens is after the video is complete, it takes time to convert before I can even go on Zoom. So I just sent a new link just in case. Um, but I guess it worked out. Did you log in with the old link or the new link?
I started with the old one and then I did the new link.
Okay, great, great. Um, where were we?
I don't know.
I think it had to do with the ideological differences between the United States and China and where
Right,
do we
right. And what I was saying is that just in international diplomacy in general, at the moment, ideology is becoming more and more important because the United States is seeking ever closer relations and cooperation among democracies. And the group of China, Russia, Iran, North Korea are themselves forming, based in part on anti-democratic ideology, a loose grouping of their own. Now it's not clear. It's not as though the four countries are as closely aligned as, say, NATO or the EU or something, but they are cooperating at least into one-on-one with one another. So I would say ideology is getting more and more important now. I don't see because um, foreign affairs is also based on all kinds of realist and balance of power considerations. I can see the cooperation among democracies lasting and being more closely bonded than the relationships among China, Russia, Iran, North Korea.
Do you think that China is playing both sides, trying to develop a stronger relationship with the United States, while at the same time trying to balance against it with its alliance with Iran, with Russia, and with Iran, Russia, and North Korea?
It may be trying. I just don't think it is getting all that far, or even hopes to get all that far in a new relationship with the United States. I mean, take a look at just the last couple of years, the degree of hype that was built around the meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden in San Francisco last year. I don't think either country believed that that was going to transform U.S.-China relations, and it didn't.
Yeah, so relations have been really there's been great tensions between the two nations, particularly during the Biden administration.
Right.
Um,
But your question was about balancing.
yeah.
I'm not sure that the Chinese themselves think that they're balancing relations with Iran versus the United States. It's really those two countries and components are so different that I don't see that.
What given the strides that China has made in investment and research and development with the Made in China 2025 and other state-led development programs that it has initiated, how significant is it in terms of China's ambitions to lead in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and clean energy?
I mean, it's significant. I should say that uh, retrospectively, in a way, I'm glad that China announced its Made in 2025 program because it woke up companies and uh, people interested in technology inside the United States and the West. Somehow they looked at that and finally grasped what China was trying to do.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, they're trying to take the lead in those particular areas and channeling exorbitant amounts of money to reduce their reliance
Right.
on the West, especially in light of the United States has there's a lot of talk in the United States about implementing a policy of de-risking and decoupling. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I think the original word was decoupling, and there is some decoupling going on, obviously. I mean, you see companies moving from um, their some of their manufacturing to whether it's Vietnam or Southeast Asia or Mexico. Uh, but the very word made it sound as though all of American business was withdrawing from um, China uh, and should. And I think that wasn't realistic. So starting with uh, Ursula von der Leyen, I think in Europe, but also in the United States, the lesser word was de-risking. And there's a good logical basis for de-risking. I mean, we had gone through COVID and the threats to supply chains. So de-risking as a concept made more sense. I'm not sure. Again, decoupling was happening, was never going too far. De-risking is going a little further. It's quite striking now that the common wisdom uh, in Germany is that they became too reliant on China for exports and too reliant on cars and chemicals.
Yeah,
Um, so, I mean, the de-risking made more sense as a word and was more palatable in the West than decoupling, and it does make sense. But again, de-risking does not amount to pulling out of a country, in pulling all trade out of a country and manufacturing.
yeah, but it also will protect the United States from from supplying the Chinese with critical technologies that can be, even though it may has a commercial purpose on their economy, but as military fusion, it
Right.
can transfer over to its military dual use technologies, which which can further challenge the United States, and it could also be used to unify Taiwan. What do you
Yes.
think in terms of Taiwan, what the United States' policy should be uh, with respect to Taiwan, considering Xi Jinping has said that the PLA should be ready by 2027, the 100th anniversary of the PLA, uh, to possibly reunify Taiwan with the mainland.
I think that American policies, I mean, over the years, but it's well, let me take that back. American policy in recent years has generally been in the direction of a strong support for Taiwan, even if they've left the policy of strategic ambiguity theoretically in place. But generally, I think the policy has been strong support for Taiwan, and I think that will continue. I am a little bit nervous about the Trump administration.
Yeah, considering Taiwan produces more than 70% of chips
Yeah,
to the world. I think 90% of the most sophisticated chips to the world. I think China is relying on them for the majority of their chips as well. So that may deter them in some way, shape, or form, or they think they could take over the manufacturing facility that develops chips. Do you think the United States public would have the stomach for intervening in Taiwan should China attack?
that's a very good question. I think so. But I certainly worry about the general streak of isolationism within the United States. So far, it's been a minority view, but it's certainly affecting the war in Ukraine. Now, I should say, in general, that I look at the coverage at the moment of the new Trump China team, and they're China Hawks, China Hawks, China Hawks. What else is new? I mean, the Biden people were China Hawks too. What interests me, to come back to Taiwan, is that there are two strains of China Hawks, okay? And there, one of them, uh, I would call the Asia First China Hawks. We should abandon Ukraine. We should, in general, give ever less importance to Europe and turn all of our attention to Asia, and in particular to making sure there's no invasion of Taiwan. And then the other strain is what I would call the regular hawks. Uh, I think that people like the new Secretary of State, who was originally essentially an anti-communist with of Cuban roots.
Rubio,
I
right? Referring to
Yeah,
Rubio.
Rubio. I think that those guys are not in favor of cozying up to Putin.
Hmm.
So you get a funny debate with China at the center of whether the United States should abandon or withdraw its emphasis on Europe in order to focus on Taiwan versus those, including people in Taiwan, who say nothing could be worse than to give China the signal that the United States would abandon Ukraine, because that suggests it might abandon Taiwan as well. And that's an intense, under the surface debate with the new team.
Yeah. I mean, so do you think that if China were to attack, we would send our military there, or we would just supply them with weaponries to somehow counter, or defensive weapons to prevent Taiwan from being uh, becoming a part of the mainland again?
No, I think we would support Taiwan militarily. The first, I mean, the military experts will tell you that um, there's a two-part strategy. First, the United States needs to give Taiwan enough weaponry to hold out on its own for several days,
Hmm.
because that's how long it would take for American troops and planes and ships to get there. But then I think they would be there.
Okay. And do you see China as being on track to become the next superpower? What challenges might prevent China from achieving this status?
Um, I'm sorry. Let me close the door here. I'll be
Oh,
right back because people walked in and are talking.
no problem.
Okay, I remember part of the question was, will China become the next superpower?
And what
Right.
challenges might prevent China from achieving this status?
I mean, I do think that China at this point can qualify, given its economic uh, uh, position and status, can be considered a superpower at this point. I mean, if the Soviet Union was considered a superpower, yeah, China has fewer missiles, but generally, I think it qualifies as a superpower, and it's working on those missiles as we speak. Um, what could prevent it would be one, a tremendous economic downturn, and two, tremendous internal disorder.
Mhm. That makes sense. And what about the United States' role in preventing or containing China from right now its interests are to become a regional power, but maybe it has aspirations to become a global power where it could um uh influence the international community in a way that it's advantageous to its rise or to its strength. What can the United States do to contain them?
Well, I think the United States is already reacting to the possibility of a Chinese superpower. You find it in out of the way places like the South Pacific, where the Chinese are increasingly active. And lo and behold, in response, the United States is opening up embassies on small islands and things like that. So it's already doing that. I think that the United States should be much more active um, in Africa and Latin America than it is in pointing out the problems with China's approach. I phrase that in general, certainly the Belt and Road Initiative and the
Mhm.
indebtedness that it fosters, the United States. And I say it should be doing it, should be doing this. It is doing this to some extent, but it really needs to increase its efforts to prevent China from dominating what the experts call the information space.
Mhm. But the interesting thing is, if China is perceived as this great power and a superpower, it classifies itself as a developing country in the World Trade Organization, where it can avoid where it can implement tariffs and other type things to protect its indigenous companies uh, over the years until it develops into a great power. But it still sees itself as a developing country within that international organization.
Well, um, you phrase that as a matter of perception that it
Mhm.
sees itself as a developing country. The desire to have that perception is fueled by the economic interest that there are economic
Mhm.
benefits that accrue, and you mentioned them, to
Mhm.
being classified as a developing country. I'm not sure that China really sees itself as a developing country. I think it's kind of funny and maybe a little bit uh, more subtle. It sees backwoods, rural, non-coastal China as a developing country. I think it generally it does see that, but I don't think that people uh, in Shanghai
Mhm.
or I mean, pick your coastal city, see themselves as a developing country at all. In fact, they take a look at their highways, even if they don't have any
Yeah.
people or cars on them, and see that, or certainly their high-speed rail, and
Yeah.
see themselves as superior to the so-called developed countries.
Sure. Sure. Its technological innovations and
Yeah.
advancements
Right,
have really put it on the world stage,
right.
and it can compete globally with the United States in a lot of different areas. But to some extent, uh, what they do is they seem to copy Western technology. They steal through hacking, through taking over American corporations or companies, among other things. But then through these state-led development, they work on developing it and advancing the technology that they've gotten from American companies. Just like the high-speed rail from Japan, they formed a joint venture.
Mhm.
Japan, they learned the technology from Japan and they improved upon it. That seems to be their strategy. What can the United States do to prevent China from doing that? Particularly in recent years, it has taken a lot of technology. Supposedly, there's a lot of articles on it's taking a lot of technology from Tesla, and now it's working on self-driving cars.
I think it should prevent the transfer of any advanced high technology to China. Beyond that, I mean, it can't stop uh, China from uh, borrowing Japanese train technology and improving on it. I mean, I think there's nothing the United States can do about that, but it can certainly, in very new areas of technology, whether it's AI or whatever, it can certainly prevent the transfer of skills, know-how, and technology to China.
Yeah, and that's important. That's
Yeah.
important, especially what advantages will the leader have in those critical technologies? What advantages would in terms of if they and if they develop technology that's superior to that of the United States, what role would that play And how will things play out in the international community? Do you foresee if their technology is more advanced than the United States in critical sectors, in terms of computing, AI, biotechnology, clean energy?
I haven't thought that through. Certainly, it will present itself to the world then as the leader in technology, and we can provide things for you if we want that the United States can't. But I haven't really thought through what kind of role. But on the other hand, would it want to start providing these technologies to other countries? I think it's simply symbolically it would enable China to present itself as the world leader.
Yeah, and it can, instead of following the world standard, it can create the world standard for others to
Yes.
follow.
Yeah.
And there can be a technology war between the United States and China in that respect. And
Well, there have been, and I don't know the exact details on this, but the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, which I served on for a couple of years, was looking at China's efforts to influence internet global standards and the agency that controls them.
yeah, all right, look, I mean, that's about all the questions that I have. I want to thank you for answering them. Have you been to China recently?
I haven't been, no, I have not, and
Mhm.
I do not plan to go anytime in the next few years. If I could be, I would love to see China again. If I could be dropped from a helicopter into Shanghai, Beijing, or for that matter, rural China, with a guarantee of extricating myself,
Mhm.
I would be happy to do it. I'd love to see it, but under current
Yeah.
circumstances, I'm not going to do it. No.
Yeah, I've written a book on the aviation industry in China. Have got a lot of sensitive information. So I'm worried that if I'd even be allowed back in the country, or I'd be considered a spy or something like that under the current
Yeah,
state.
that's
Really
the kind
scary.
of yeah. It sounds weird, but yeah, that you're exactly the kind of person that they would take an interest in.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
mean, having written that book, I mean, yeah.
yeah, yeah, you as well.
When were you in China at any point along
Yeah, I
your
was back and forth throughout between 2002 to 2008. I was
Mhm.
there back and coming back and forth. But after that, I haven't been there since Xi Jinping came into office. I think it's, to do research in that country would be virtually impossible, especially under the surveillance state, and listening devices. And I think people would be scared to
Oh,
be interviewed or offer
yeah,
any information that may be perceived as going against the current regime or sensitive information, and they can get in trouble for it. So
yeah,
doing research there would get me in trouble, if not the people I'm interviewing in trouble. Uh, so I don't think it would be beneficial to do research. I think most research has to be through your connections and networks that you have with people who have gone to and from China,
yes,
and secondary information, what's reported in the news.
yep. I mean, you asked a couple questions I had no immediate formulated answer for. So I don't know whether you want to just drop them or
We
send
could
them to.
drop. I mean, I think in
Okay,
a roundabout way you've answered them.
okay,
A lot of them on follow-up questions. I think that you tackled it from some of the follow-up questions that I've asked.
okay, okay.
All
Well,
right.
good.
So, how was your Thanksgiving? Was it good?
It
Did you
was
travel?
excellent. And yours?
Not bad. I was in
Uh,
Florida.
I was in New York.
Were you really?
Yeah, sure. My family. I have both of my kids live in in the city, or one lives in the city and one lives in Westchester.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice. I
yeah.
was in Florida visiting the folks, and my whole family's out there. So I'm out here in New York, New Jersey, the New York, New Jersey area.
You lived in New York for a while.
Yeah, I did my PhD in Denver. So I was out
Mhm.
in Denver for nearly 10 years. I lived in China for a while. I did some work in Albany, in New York. And then now I'm in New Jersey, working in New York
Great.
and all over. And I really like Colorado. That's one of my favorite places to live. So maybe I'll go back there
Okay.
someday. or if not, when I get older, maybe I'll enjoy the warm weather and move to Florida. How about you're in Johns Hopkins right now, is that correct?
Yeah, although that's a little misleading. I mean, I write at home. Johns Hopkins actually, this is more than you need need to know or want to know, but you will understand the academic dynamics. Johns Hopkins SAIS, School of Advanced International Studies, is in Washington. Obviously, the university is run out of Baltimore,
Mhm.
and 2 or 3 years ago, the president in Baltimore was offered this great deal to buy what used to be the museum, but a big glossy building on on Pennsylvania Avenue that has the Capitol within view. And he jumped at it because he
Yeah.
could do this, show that Hopkins is at the seat of power. And it's totally out of the way. I used to have an office at the old building that was, 4 blocks away from my home.
Okay.
And in addition, the old building was on what's called Think Tank Alley, which has, Brookings and five
Mhm.
others. And so now they're on imposing Pennsylvania Avenue. There's no housing for students. There's no interaction with
Wow.
other think tanks, but the president is getting his picture taken with the Capitol in the background and other donors and so on. So the short answer is I'm not at Hopkins as much as I used to be.
Gotcha. And just curious, what project are you working on now? What are you writing about?
Well, I'm thinking at the moment, I'm not sure. I've thought about doing a book that I would call the deal of the century
Yeah.
about the W, just a history of not the impact of the world of China getting into the World Trade Organization. That's a good book, but it's been done. People have written about their furniture factories in North Carolina and things like that. But simply how it happened and what, the mistakes that were made that went into that deal. But it's a tough sell, try and sell the New York publishing industry on a book that would have to have at least trade, much less WTO in the title. And there's not a great wide audience for that, much as all China hands are interested.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I wanted to take this time out to thank you. I really appreciate you listening to some of the questions that I had that were just,
oh, they were good
and
questions.
answering them.
Yeah,
And I appreciate you. I'll send you the transcript in English, and
good.
I hope if I have any future questions or in my writings, I can interview you again. Should I,
Sure, feel free. I mean, I've enjoyed
your
it.
expertise?
If I see something that I said something that was I think was gloriously, wildly wrong, in the transcript, should I let you know?
Yes, yes, sure,
Okay,
sure.
okay. But basically, I think we're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. All right, I don't want to keep you any longer. I'm
Okay.
sure you're very, very busy, and I want to thank you again. And I'll send you the transcript as soon as it becomes available.
Good. Thanks, Derek.
All right, have a good day.
Yep. Bye bye.